From the Chesapeake Bay Journal, your source for independent environmental reporting, this is Chesapeake Uncharted, the podcast that uncovers stories about the bay, its interconnected ecosystem, and the people who rely on them. I'm Jeremy Cox. On today's episode,
when you set a timeline and you don't quite hit the mark, you're going to come across some skepticism about setting another timeline. And that's going to be particularly true of elected leaders, right? If they're going to set a standard and they're going to be held accountable to it, they want to know that they can get there. So yeah, it's a question and a concern that we have to address.
Back in 2014, a barrage of folding chairs appeared along the Annapolis City dock for an historic announcement. VIPs from the states in the Chesapeake Bay region, as well as the District of Columbia and the federal government, were there. Each put their name to a document pledging to rein in pollution, the main culprits behind the bay's decades-old decline, and they gave themselves a deadline: 2025. That year seems so far away back then. Now, as of this recording, it's less than 1 year away, and well, this is a good time as any in this podcast to break the bad news. Some of the most important cleanup goals won't be met by then, like reducing the nutrient pollution that streams off farms and people's yards. Well, 2025 will mark the third time that the partnership has missed a multi-year cleanup deadline. It's possible that the state and federal partners in the Chesapeake Bay program will create a new plan over the next year and set a new deadline. And then, what, does this cycle just start all over again? That's what Killius was talking about there at the top. As the executive director of the Chesapeake Bay Commission, it's her job to think about how state lawmakers in the Bay region can help repair the bay. Welcome to Season 3 of Chesapeake Uncharted. This time, our team here at the Bay Journal is interested in hearing from a younger generation of Bay leaders, the people who weren't born when the Chesapeake Bay cleanup formally began 40 years ago. With the Bay restoration effort facing a 2025 deadline to complete its cleanup goals, this felt like a good time to go searching for some inspiration. Each episode spotlights one of these wave makers. Today, we're speaking with Killius. She took the reins of the Bay Commission on January 25th, 2023. If you're doing the math, that's 1 year and 1 day before the publication of this episode. So you could say our conversation takes place at a watershed moment in her career. And I promise, that's my last dad joke of the day. More from our conversation after this short break.
Hi, this is Laura Lutz, editor at the Chesapeake Bay Journal. I hope you're enjoying our podcast, and I'd like to invite you to join the community of Bay Journal readers. If you care about climate change, wildlife, clean air, healthy communities, and of course the Bay and its rivers, you'll find news you can use at the Bay Journal, along with some great ideas for outdoor travel. Our subscriptions are free. Check us out at bayjournal.com and click on subscribe to start receiving the best independent environmental news in the Bay region.
Hello again. On today's episode of Chesapeake Uncharted, we're talking with Killius, the politician wrangler. The Chesapeake Bay Commission was among the parties who signed the Bay Agreement 9 years ago in Annapolis. Commission members are mostly state legislators from Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Maryland who come together to learn about and discuss Bay issues so they can advise their colleagues on policy. And the Commission's chair sits on the Chesapeake Executive Council along with the Bay State governors, D.C.'s mayor, and the administrator of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. So the Commission carries some sway. Killius is a wave maker because she's engaged with politicians from different parties and different states, all in conversation about ways to clean up the bay and its rivers. She also has a track record of success on Capitol Hill and with one of Virginia's most respected watershed groups. During our conversation, she discussed what it's like to shoulder so much responsibility at such a young age, and we looked ahead toward what 2025 might bring. Well, Anna Killius, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Are you getting snow in your neck of the woods as well?
Oh, very much so. Very exciting to see the snow after so many years without.
So my apologies to people who might be picking up on this podcast later, listening in the summer perhaps and feeling jealous, but it's been a 2-year snow drought, so we have to mention it. It may not ever come again. But it's a significant time as well for you. We're recording this in January 2024, about 1 week before a milestone for you, your 1-year anniversary with the Bay Commission. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. They've kept me around for a year. Hopefully that bodes well for the future.
Hey, how's it feel to be 1 year there? You feel like you're getting your feet on the ground?
I think so. The first year, I think my goal was to not get in the way. The staff at the commission are fantastic. The members are wonderful. And so a lot of this, they can keep the wheels turning just from years of practice and expertise. And so I just didn't want to gum up the works while I got up to speed. So that was priority number one. And now I think in the next year, I'll actually be contributing. I'll actually be, making some innovations and we can push a little bit further, but it's been a great first year getting to know everyone.
The Chesapeake Bay Commission occupies, kind of a different space than a lot of different organizations. Can you help people understand what you all do there?
So the Chesapeake Bay Commission is a quasi-legislative body. And what that means is we were created in the 1980s by the General Assemblies of Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Maryland to advise them on issues of common concern when it comes to the health of the Chesapeake Bay and its watershed. Most of our members are state legislators. So of the 21 folks in our complement, 15 of them are state legislators. And that really changes or kind of determines the tenor and tone and work of the commission. But we also have 3 cabinet-level gubernatorial appointees and 3 prominent residents of those 3 states. And our goal is to create policy for the Bay. So we are looking at what are the solutions to some of those common challenges.
I've always kind of thought of it in a sense like a legislative think tank. We're aware of this problem. What can we do collectively in our respective state capitals? Am I in the right direction there?
Yes, very much so. We have no kind of regulatory authority or anything like that of our own. So it's really about coming up with good ideas and then convincing folks that that's the right direction to go in. So yeah, think tank is a great analogy.
There is a place, at least one that I know of, where there is a formal power, right, when it comes to signing Bay agreements, correct?
Yes, we have been a signatory of all of the Bay agreements to date. So that makes us a member of the Executive Council. So we are part of that sort of deciding body when it comes to the path and the direction of the Bay program.
And having 3 different states behind you that you're representing, I suppose the common theme is working together, collaboration, right?
Yeah, and you have the perspectives of those states, you have the perspectives of folks in different places within those states. We are a bipartisan body, so you have Democrats, Republicans from all necks of the woods when it comes to the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and we have to find the common ground within ourselves, which means that when we bring those solutions forward and we speak in those situations, folks recognize that we've had to think about this across our own perspectives before we bring it up in another diverse body like the Bay program.
Mm-hmm. Like there could be so much acrimony within those own states, let alone, among multiple states. I mean, that seems like that could be an insurmountable challenge on certain issues,
or does the environment kind of bring everyone together?
I think in many ways, what we focus on brings people together because they see it every day, right? Outside, in their own districts, outside their own doors, they're interacting with what we're working on each day. But there will always be challenges that are hard to bridge the gap between the states. There's just different focuses that each is going to have. And there are some issues where we may have to set that aside and say, this is not the place for us to work right now until we come up with a better sense of where the commonalities are going to be. I don't know that happens too often, but it can happen. And so we focus our efforts elsewhere in the meantime.
As an executive director, do you see yourself as picking up that torch behind a particular issue, or are you listening to what your members are saying and trying to reflect that back through the agenda and really letting their voice take the lead?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think my members expect for me and for our state directors to really be looking for things to put in front of them. This cannot be the Chesapeake Bay program and all of the partners. It's not going to be their day-to-day focus, but it will be ours. And so we have a responsibility to look for that next generation issue and bring it to them. But at the same time, they are the commission. So if they want to go down a certain path, we have to listen for that and really help bring that to them. So it's both.
It goes without saying you had enormous shoes to fill with Ann Swanson, having your predecessor there for more than 30 years. I imagine Ann has not disappeared. Have you all continued to interact at all, or has she kind of given you a wide berth and let you do your own thing?
I cannot be too complimentary of her, how she has handled the transition and how she prepared for it. So she kind of created a whole binder for me that walked through all the things that an executive director of the commission needs to know.
That sounds like Ann.
Yeah, so it is a tabbed binder that sits by my desk at all times. I reach for it often. If that doesn't answer the question, I know she is a phone call or a text away. But what was most important was in my first couple months, we scheduled like multi-hour sit-downs where we just started with a topic we wanted to talk about, but we let the conversation meander to whatever came to mind and whatever was kind of giving me the most challenge at that particular time. It was just, here's how I would have done it, or here's how we did it and why, and then you can make the best choice.
Well, let's dive into your background here a little bit. You have roots here, but also in Texas. You were born in Texas, right?
Yes, I was born in Dallas.
Dallas, okay. Very different environment, landscape, climate there. But you do have, you really consider yourself a Chesapeake native, right? When did you come here?
Oh gosh, when I was itty bitty, we weren't in Dallas for too long. Once my dad joined the Navy, we ended up moving around the southeast for a little bit. But I guess my formative years, right, the years I remember in elementary school, we were down in Virginia Beach and Norfolk, and then middle school, high school came up to Southern Maryland. So we bounced around those portions of the Chesapeake Bay, and I pretty much knew if we crossed that sign that said now entering the Chesapeake Bay watershed, I knew my territory.
Did you spend time on the bay or fish or anything like that?
I did an environmental education trip, right? I did my meaningful watershed experience in a canoe on the Patuxent River. We used to go into the marshes and see the little fiddler crabs running around when I was little, and my mom would take us out to the local parks and museums all along the tributaries and the bay itself. I remember watching the tall ships or seeing, my dad's ship, naval vessel, come in. So, lots of experiences in my life are kind of built around the bay.
Was there a moment or time when you said, yeah, I could see myself working in the environment?
I would say that came from, it didn't really click until law school. So my first year of law school, I kind of knew I wanted to do public service, but I didn't know exactly how. And I had the great fortune of interviewing with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation for their summer legal intern program. Interviewed with Peggy Sanner for an internship my first year of law school, first summer. And I bombed that interview. It was terrible. I knew nothing that I needed to know.
I find that hard to believe.
You get a sense, right? When you start an interview, you can get a sense if you're prepared and you're skilled for the job or not. And it was clear in talking to her. We had a wonderful conversation, but I had the feeling I wasn't ready. There was a lot I needed to learn about environmental law and about, I knew about the watershed. I didn't know about how it interacted with the legal world. So, luckily, I still got an internship with NASA. They let me in. But I came back the second year and I applied for that same internship with CBF, had another interview with Peggy, and by that point I had gotten my ducks in a row and done the work I needed to do to be helpful. So that was the turning point, kind of that first failure, figuring out how to do better and be better, and then getting my act together.
From a legal perspective, why do you need that kind of background to bring to something that at first blush sounds like pure environmental science, research, biology, that sort of thing?
There's another side of this that is very much based on regulatory requirements and putting limits and permits in place on folks that are releasing, into our waterways. So if you're going to make sure that you're following the laws and following those regulatory requirements, you really have to understand, how do you interpret law? How do you read it? How do you write it so that it effectively does what you want it to do? How do agencies implement the law? What are the regulatory requirements they're writing to make sure that the law is followed? And then how are we holding the folks that have to get those permits and follow those regulations, how are we holding them accountable? And all of that takes place within a legal realm that it helps to have that sort of education as your foundation.
And from there, was it a straight line to the James? I'm sorry, you worked in Congress first, right? John Sarbanes' office, who is retiring now.
He is, yeah. I had the great fortune. So I did a fellowship through NOAA first for a year in a different office, representing the first district of New Hampshire. But I had the great fortune of finding my way into John Sarbanes' office and getting to do his environmental portfolio, including his work as co-chair of the Chesapeake Bay Congressional Task Force. And that was, I couldn't have asked for a better portfolio to work on. It was exactly what I wanted to spend my time doing. And so I got to spend a little over 4 years understanding how the work we were doing in Congress would impact the efforts that were happening regionally, at the state level and locally, to make the Bay healthier.
So you go from the halls of Congress to that mansion-looking place in Richmond, working for the James River Association as their policy advocate. And I'm curious what that transition was like.
Well, it was quick. I went to the James River Association, I think in September, and we were already gearing up for the next General Assembly. So it was a really quick primer on how I've got some idea of how federal policy works and Congress works. Got to learn how Virginia works. And Virginia is, if Congress is a slog, Virginia is a sprint. And trying to learn that sprint quickly was a challenge, but it was also exciting because you knew at the end of either 45 or 60 days, you were going to have something. You were going to have decisions, whether they were the decisions you wanted or not.
Which brings us to today. And what are you all working on now at the commission?
Our Virginia folks are working on resilience within their General Assembly agenda this year. That will be a focus, kind of putting that infrastructure, that governance infrastructure in place. Our Maryland delegation is really focused on figuring out what they can do to push the envelope on innovation when it comes to the findings of the CSER report, right? The comprehensive evaluation of system response that our scientists provided to the Bay program. Here's how we're doing. And so our Marylanders kind of took that information in, and they're trying to come up with policy solutions that respond to that report, looking at ways to target kind of whole watersheds, whole small watersheds, and drive resources there to do a number of projects that are kind of complementary and built around the needs of that specific small watershed. So they're looking at targeting, they're looking at kind of complementary work and practices and coalitions. Our Pennsylvanians, they had great success with pulling together the Clean Streams funding and the new Agricultural Conservation Assistance Program. But they know that the funding, it's already, I think almost every dollar is already planned to be spent. And so they know they need to put more money into that fund to keep that program kind of booming.
I know a lot of the states are facing kind of the toughest budget negotiations that they've had in quite a while, because a lot of those pandemic era federal funding streams are drying up now. How do you expect that to affect environmental priorities?
It'll be a challenge, right? Whenever you have a situation, and so many of our members, our commission members, are appropriators, they have been kind of seeing the tea leaves and knowing that the balance is going to be a little bit more difficult in the future, because they have to, they've got so many different needs to serve. So I think we're looking at how do we make the investments more effective, right? Are there things we can change? If we can't change the overall number, are there things that we can change about the delivery that makes that money go further? Or are there ways that we can deliver that money and then pull in private dollars too?
2025 is a big year in the Bay cleanup. For if folks are not aware, the current Bay agreement is set to expire in that year, and the goals for everyone, all the jurisdictions, is to have completed the steps necessary to achieve those said pollution diet targets. And Killius, are we going to hit those targets?
I think it's been made very clear, and the Executive Council has known, that we are not going to meet all of our goals by 2025.
So what do we do?
That is the question of the hour, right? So we know that we are not on track on many of our goals. We know that we are on track or have already accomplished some of them. So there are good things to celebrate and learn from and build from. But for the things where we're not on track, the message right now, which has been the message for quite a while, but was kind of crystallized in the charting the course report that the Bay program worked on over the last year, is that we need to kind of accelerate and kind of have the foot on the gas on all of the plans we already have in place. We have, decades worth of planning and programs and investments aligned, which is the work of commission members, of leaders, across the watershed. And that's all doing good work. And we need to keep doing that work. At the same time, we can hold this another truth in our minds, which is it won't get us all the way to where we want to go. Right. So do that while figuring out what else do we need to do.
What do you think is the best way forward after 2025?
I think it's pretty clear to everyone I've talked to that we are not trying to take the Bay back to, frankly, something that we've never seen in our lifetimes, and is probably not reflective of the changes in the conditions we're going to have in the future. So putting that aside, we need to figure out what is a Bay that works for us. What is a Bay that delivers living resources and clean water and the right conditions so that the people within our watershed can flourish?
And I could pull a lot of different, threads here. So I my apologies to riparian buffers, for example, but we just don't have the time. But one that I did want to highlight was environmental justice. And that has been a growing part of the Bay cleanup and the formal goals. The Executive Council, your commission, signed on to putting that more in the spotlight a few years ago. In 2025, how would you like to see environmental justice integrated into this effort going forward?
That's a really good question, because it is certainly something that I think you'd be hard-pressed to find an environmental movement that isn't struggling with that question. One of my focuses, personally, within the commission realm, is making sure that we are, as we travel throughout the watershed, which has always been a hallmark of our meetings, is trying to bring our commission members to places throughout the watershed and really experience what that breadth is. Really highlight the locality or the local communities of where we are. So in every meeting, really try to think about how do we lift up the stories of this community and what they're facing and what their needs are. And how do we make sure that when we do that, we're doing it equitably, we're pulling in diverse perspectives. We're not just talking to the same people all the time, although we know and love the same people and they are excellent experts. But there are more people that we can be bringing in.
From a formal way, I know it's a very qualitative sociological issue, but we have backstops and some teeth when it comes to nutrient loads and that sort of thing. Is it worth exploring something like that when it comes to environmental justice, or is it something that is a little less quantitative?
I don't know the answer to that, but I think one of the things we're seeing is, we talk about targeting, we talk about, delivering resources and practices and programs to places that are going to have the most benefit. And the important word there is most benefit. And if we define most benefit by just pollution reduction, that gives you one answer. If you define most benefit by people that you're reaching, that gives you another answer. If you define most benefit by addressing environmental justice areas, places that have been underserved and under-resourced, that gives you yet another answer. So I think the devil in the details will be, how do we keep redefining most benefit, delivering the most benefit, and making sure that we meet all of those needs? And I think that's the big challenge ahead of us.
Thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations, you're a wave maker.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Chesapeake Uncharted is brought to you by the Bay Journal, your source for independent environmental news in the Chesapeake region. Production for this episode was by me, Jeremy Cox. The story was edited by Laura Lutz. Our marketing and advertising director is Jackie Kane. You can find more episodes of Chesapeake Uncharted on your favorite streaming service or at ChesapeakeUncharted.com. If you like what you're hearing, sign up for a free Bay Journal news subscription at BayJournal.com. Until next time, this has been Jeremy Cox. Take care.